Right. So now let us start with an important topic, computation of the capital gains. Because ఎందుకంటే part 1 అయిపోయింది. Part 1 లో మనం ఏం డిస్కస్ చేసాం, ఛార్జింగ్ సెక్షన్, what is meaning of transfer, okay, what is meaning of transfer, what is not called as transfer, and what is the meaning of capital asset, what is long term capital asset, and what is short term capital asset. అది మనం డిస్కస్ చేసాం. Now today let us step ahead and try to calculate, try to understand how do we calculate capital gains. So computation of capital gains, computation of capital gains. Let us see, computation of something called as capital gains. దీంట్లో we need to go through two sections. What is that? The first section is nothing but section 2 subsection 49b ఒకటి, then section 2 subsection 29b ఒకటి. So these are the two different sections we are having, section 2 subsection 49b, section 2 subsection 29b. What is this? This is nothing but explaining you how to calculate. So it is 49, this is, one second, this is 42, this is 42, section 2 subsection 42b, section 2 subsection 29b. Now what is this? This tells you how do we calculate something called as short term capital gain, and this will tell you how do you calculate something called as long term capital gain. So short term capital gain, how do we calculate? Long term capital gain, how do we calculate? That's what is the section 42 subsection 42b to 29b is telling about. Now ఏం చెప్తుంది, what the section says? That section is very simple. ఏం చెప్తుంది అది? షార్ట్ టర్మ్ క్యాపిటల్ గెయిన్ అరైజింగ్ ఫ్రమ్ ట్రాన్స్ఫర్ ఆఫ్ షార్ట్ టర్మ్ క్యాపిటల్ అసెట్. అంటే షార్ట్ టర్మ్ క్యాపిటల్ గెయిన్ అంటే ఏంటి? ఇట్స్ ప్యూర్లీ గివ్స్ ఎ డెఫినేషన్ ఆఫ్ షార్ట్ టర్మ్ క్యాపిటల్ గెయిన్. ఇట్ సేస్ గెయిన్ అరైజింగ్, any sort of short term capital gain arising, any sort of gain arising, దేని నుంచి? From transfer. Transfer of what? Transfer of short term capital asset. Short term capital asset transfer చేస్తే వచ్చే gain short term capital gain అంటాం, as per section 2 subsection 42 clause B. Now 229 subsection B ఏం చెప్తుంది? Any sort of gain arising from what? Any sort of gain arising from transfer. Transfer of what? Transfer of long term capital asset. So long term capital asset నేను transfer చేస్తే whatever gain I get, that gain is called as long term capital gain. Short term capital asset transfer చేస్తే వచ్చే gain is said to be called as a short term capital gain. So yesterday we have already discussed short term capital asset ante enti, long term capital asset ante enti, that already we have discussed. Enti short term capital asset? Any asset held for a period of less than 12 months, any asset held for a period of less than 24 months, any asset held for a period of less than 36 months. 12 months of case lo, 24 months of case lo, any case it is 36 months. 12 months ఎప్పుడు? ఫైనాన్షియల్ అసెట్ అయితే. 24 months ఎప్పుడు? అన్లిస్టెడ్ షేర్స్, ల్యాండ్ అండ్ బిల్డింగ్ 24 months. ఈ రెండు కాకుండా ఎనీ అదర్ అసెట్ 36 months కన్నా తక్కువ హెల్డ్ చేస్తే షార్ట్ టర్మ్ అవుతుంది. ఇన్ అదర్ కేసెస్, ఇఫ్ ద ఫైనాన్షియల్ అసెట్ ఈస్ హెల్డ్ ఫర్ ఎ పీరియడ్ ఆఫ్ 12 months or more, లాంగ్ టర్మ్ క్యాపిటల్ అసెట్. If a land and building is held for a period of 24 months or more, long term capital asset. అలాగే any other asset held for a period of 36 months or more, long term capital asset అవుతుంది. అలాంటి లాంగ్ టర్మ్ క్యాపిటల్ అసెట్ ఇఫ్ ఐ సెల్, నాకు గెయిన్ వస్తే ఆ గెయిన్ ఏమంటాం? యాజ్ పర్ సెక్షన్ 2 సబ్సెక్షన్ 29b, దట్ గెయిన్ ఈస్ సెడ్ టు బి కాల్డ్ యాజ్ వెల్ లాంగ్ టర్మ్ క్యాపిటల్ గెయిన్. ఇది బేసిక్ పార్ట్. నౌ అంతేగాని సెక్షన్ 2 సబ్సెక్షన్ 42 and 29b డస్ నాట్ టెల్ యూ how do we calculate. It just gives you what is short term capital gain and what is long term capital gain. ఎలా క్యాలిక్యులేట్ చేయాలో చూడాలి అంటే we need to get into some section called as section 48. Section 48 gives you mode of computation of your short term capital gain. So just quickly take this down, then we'll proceed on to section 48, mode of calculation of your capital gain. Okay, right. Now so basic section discuss చేసాం. We have discussed the basic section. Now let us quickly get into something called as section 48. Okay, section 48 ఏంటి? Section 48 is nothing but mode of computation. Mode of computation. Mode of computation. So as we know, mode of computation of what? Capital gain. Now we have just now discussed మనకి two types of capital gains ఉన్నాయి. ఏంటది? The first one is nothing but short term capital gain. The second one is something called as long term capital gain. So first one ఏంటి? Short term capital gain అవుతుంది. Second one will be something called as long term capital gain. Now let us see, how do we calculate short term capital gain? How do we calculate the long term capital gain in accordance with section 48? Now first principle, first thing, I need to calculate something called as full value of consideration. Full value of consideration we need to calculate. Okay, there are a lot of things which we need to discuss going forward. మనం డిస్కస్ చేద్దాం. Full value of consideration అంటే ఏంటి? What is the meaning of full value of consideration? Sale consideration. ఒక asset sale చేస్తే how much consideration I will be getting? That's what is something called as full value of consideration. So now we are trying to calculate the capital gain for two things. One, short term capital gain, other one for your long term capital gain. Now full value of consideration. What is the full value of consideration? Suppose this is nothing but your full value of consideration. Asset short term capital asset aite the gain will be short term capital gain. If the asset is long term capital asset, the gain will be something called as long term capital gain. So full value of consideration is the first thing which I need to take. Now from this I need to reduce enti. To get this full value of consideration, you are incurring some expenses. You are incurring some sort of expenses. Expenses incurred. Deniki expenses incurred for transfer. Expenses incurred for transfer of capital asset. Expenses incurred for transfer of a capital asset. Say for example, నాకు ఒక హౌస్ ఉంది. ఆ హౌస్ నేను సేల్ చేద్దాం అనుకుంటున్నాను. సేల్ చేద్దాం అనుకుంటే I don't know anyone. So I don't know anyone. Okay, just one second. Yeah. Say I am having a house. A house నేను సేల్ చేయాలి. If I want to sell the house, I don't know anyone. So I will be engaging a broker. See, broker engage చేసుకున్నప్పుడు సేల్ కన్సిడరేషన్ మీద కొంత కమిషన్ అనేది అతనికి పే చేయాలి. సో కమిషన్ paid to the broker is nothing but the expenses incurred in relation to the transfer. It's an example. అదొకటే కాదు. You may be incurring several sort of expenses to the transfer. So whatever expense you do, that you have to consider. So adi nenu consider chestam. So I will simply consider the expenses which I am incurring on the transfer. Idi teeseste. So once I reduce this, full value of consideration nothing but the sale consideration. దాంట్లోంచి expense incurred నేను తీసేస్తే I will call this as what? Net sale consideration. This will be called as net sale consideration. So till now everything is same. Short term capital gain and long term capital gain, no difference is there till here. Clear? Full value of consideration ఏంటి? Sale consideration. Asset sale చేస్తే whatever value I get, that will be called as full value of consideration. Sale చేయాలంటే ఎంతైతే expense incur అవుతున్నానో that will be considered as your expense incurred in terms of your transfer. The difference of these two, say అంటే if I call this as A, if I call this as B, I call this as C, and A minus B is nothing but your net sale consideration. అయిపోయింది. ఇక్కడ వరకు సేమ్. షార్ట్ టర్మ్ క్యాపిటల్ గెయిన్ అయినా సరే, లాంగ్ టర్మ్ క్యాపిటల్ గెయిన్ అయినా సరే, till now everything remains the same. Now let us try to see what we are going to do. From this I need to consider two things. Less what? Less something called as cost of acquisition. Cost of acquisition, ఇది మనం డిస్కస్ చేద్దాం. గోయింగ్ ఫార్వర్డ్ డిస్కస్. This is covered under something called as section 55. Section 55 of the Income Tax Act defines something called as cost of acquisition. Alage we'll also have something called as cost of improvement, cost of improvement, cost of acquisition, cost of improvement, both the things we need to consider. Now, cost of acquisition, cost of improvement. Here it changes. If that is a long-term capital gain, I need to find out something called as indexed cost of acquisition, and I need to find out something called as indexed cost of improvement. ఎప్పుడు ఇండెక్సేషన్ క్యాలిక్యులేట్ చేయాలి, ఎప్పుడు చేయకూడదు, విల్ గోయింగ్ ఫార్వర్డ్ విల్ డిస్కస్ when we are going with section 55. Okay, so here you will be getting something called as indexed cost of acquisition. Here you will be getting something called as indexed cost of improvement. Then this difference, the net sale consideration minus cost of acquisition minus cost of improvement, net sale consideration minus indexed cost of acquisition minus indexed cost of improvement. ఏమంటాం దీన్ని? We will call this as short-term capital gain. We will call this as long-term capital gain. So this is short-term capital gain. This is long-term capital gain. Okay. Now, దీని నుంచి I need to reduce one thing. ఏంటి? Less exemptions under section 54. See, under section 54 and not only 54, it includes 54, 54B, 54D, 54 EC, 54ED, 54G, whatever it is, whatever section 54 you are having, that you need to reduce. That you need to reduce. Then ultimately, you will be getting something called as taxable short-term capital gain, taxable long-term capital gain. That's what is section 48. Okay, just quickly take down this section 48, then we'll move on to section 55. Now let us move on to section 55. So clear kada whatever we discussed, we have discussed the definition of short-term capital gain, 2 subsection 42B, and we have discussed 2 subsection 29B. Short-term capital gain over discuss chesaam. What is the meaning of short-term capital gain? Gain arising from transfer of a short-term capital asset. Gain arising from transfer of a long-term capital asset is said to be called as well long-term as well as short-term capital gain. Then we have discussed something called as section. We have discussed something called as section 48, which is nothing but the mode, which is nothing but the mode of calculation of your capital gain. Now let us discuss quickly something called as was section 55. Okay, section 55 discuss that. Section 55, what is this? Section 55 speaks about cost of acquisition. It speaks about something called as well cost of acquisition. Now let us see what is cost of acquisition. See, 2 points discuss. We have discussed something called as cost of acquisition, and we have discussed something called as indexed cost of acquisition. Cost of acquisition has to be calculated for the short-term capital gains. Indexed cost of acquisition has to be calculated for your long-term capital asset. Short-term capital asset, I need to calculate cost of acquisition. Long-term capital assets, I need to calculate something called as indexed cost of acquisition. Ela calculate cheyali? How do I calculate this? Let us try to see. Indexed cost of acquisition. How do we calculate? What is the meaning of indexed cost of acquisition? Aslu enti? Let us try to understand. See, manaki index tables every year will be having something called as index tables. Okay, index tables has been commenced from 2001 2002 financial year. Of course, earlier if you look into the old act 2 years back, you can find out that you will be having index factors from 81, but act amended. So once the act got amended, now the index tables are there from only financial year 2001 and 2002. So starting the base was taken as 100. Index tables, as why the concept of index tables has been raised. Say suppose, let me take an example of Vizag. Say Vizag lo 2001 and 2002 lo, say for example in Madhurwada or whatever area it is, okay, I had purchased a land. So let us consider 1500 SFT land I had purchased in Madhurwada area. Say suppose epudu in the year 2001 and 2002. Okay, say at that point of time this 1500 SFT ni enta konnanu, ee entire thing I had purchased for 2 lakhs. Entire land or house, whatever it is, let us consider house. Oka 1500 SFT 2001 and 2002, before cricket stadium was not there, before Vizag was declared as an executive capital, 1500 SFT was purchased at 2 lakhs. Now ide land today I want to sell. If I want to sell, I'll be getting what? Yeah, Navya. హలో నవ్య చెప్పమ్మా, ఏం డౌట్ ఏంటి? Okay, so what are you telling? Yeah, same land I want to sell. I want to sell this land in the financial year 1920. So ఎప్పుడు సేల్ చేస్తున్నాను నేను? 1920లో సేల్ చేస్తున్నాను. What was my cost of acquisition? 2 lakhs was my cost of acquisition. Now 1920లో I am selling this for, so let me consider I am selling this for 50 lakhs. After declaration of everything, the value of the place got appreciated. Now, if I need to pay like this, ఇక్కడ మనం ఎలా కన్సిడర్ చేసాం capital gain? Sale consideration less expense on transfer less cost of acquisition. Sale consideration 50, expense on transfer ఏది లేదు, cost of acquisition 2 lakhs. If the government asks me to pay 48 lakhs as my capital gain, that's injustice. Enduku? Long back ago, the value was 2 lakhs. There is something called as inflation. Inflation concept of undi kada. 1 lo 2 lakhs. There the index value is what? 100. Ante simple ga cheppalante, when the index value was 100, the cost was 2 lakhs. When the index value is 289 enduko? Every year we'll be getting an index value. The index value for 1920 is 289. 100 unnappudu the cost is 2 lakhs. 289 unnappudu what is the cost? That is an inflated cost of acquisition. That inflated cost of acquisition is something called as what? Indexed cost of acquisition. So em chestunam akkada, we are trying to calculate 2 lakhs into 289 divided by 100. ante kada, cross multiply. 100 ki 2 lakhs aithe 289 ki enta? 289 into 2 lakhs divided by 100 cheste you will be getting the value. I don't have the calculator with me, so I want someone to say the answer. Enta 2 lakhs into 289 divided by 100? Yeah, I got my calculator. Enta? 5,78,000. So 5,78,000. Enti 5,78,000 indexed cost of acquisition. So that is the reason whenever you are holding for a period of more than 36 months, more than 24 months, you can take something called as indexation. ఎందుకు 36 months kanda ఎక్కువ హోల్డ్ చేస్తే, 36 months kanda ఎక్కువ హోల్డ్ చేస్తే, that will be called as long term cap asset. So I am purchasing with an investment point of view. అంతే తప్ప ఇప్పుడు కొని రేట్ పెరిగితే అమ్మేద్దాం అని కాదు. It's not a speculation. I am purchasing for an investment point of view. So that is the reason whenever you are having something called as long-term capital asset, you should always calculate something called as indexed cost of acquisition. So indexed cost of acquisition we need to calculate. Clear? I hope this is clear. So that is the reason you are trying to calculate something called as the indexed cost of acquisition. So cost of acquisition ante enti? First of all, what is the meaning of cost of acquisition? Cost of purchase. Cost of purchase is something called as our cost of acquisition. The cost at which you are purchasing is something called as our cost of acquisition. Some cases, I will come to that later. In some cases, or cost to previous owner. Generally, నేను ఎంతకైతే కొంటున్నానో that will be my cost of acquisition. నేను కొనలేదు, you had gifted me, so ultimately cost to the previous owner will be considered as cost of acquisition. That's what we will be discussing under something called as 49 subsection 1. That we'll discuss at later stage. At present, my focus is only on section 45 but not on 49 subsection 1. So let us focus only on section 55. Okay. Now, cost of acquisition is this. So what is the meaning of cost of acquisition here? Purchase cost. Purchase cost is something called as cost of acquisition. Okay. Then index cost of acquisition. Why we are giving index cost of acquisition? As there is something called as inflation. The cost earlier is different, the cost today is different. The value earlier is different, the value today is different. So based upon this, నేను ఎంతకైతే కాస్ట్ కొన్నానో దాన్ని కూడా ఇన్ఫ్లేట్ చేయాలి. That's the reason every year will be having a new value which is called as our index value. So index value from the examination point of view మనం గుర్తుపెట్టుకోవాల్సిన అవసరం లేదు. But current year మాత్రం గుర్తుపెట్టుకోవాలి. At present 289. This we need to remember. This 289 we should remember. That's it. Okay, so that's what is the basic background behind your cost of acquisition and cost of acquisition. Come on, cost of improvement here we'll discuss that. So indexation. So these are the areas where indexation has to be provided. Now, okay, 1 second. Okay, now, so we know when to calculate indexation. For what to we calculate indexation? Indexation then calculate chestam only for long term but not for short term. See, always I had mentioned one thing. Capital gains antene exception. General fundamental rule enti long term capital asset indexation has to be provided. But now we are going to discuss long term capital asset for which no indexation is to be given. For which no indexation is to be provided. So, ante the simple way enti other than this long term capital asset, remaining all long term capital asset em cheyali, I can provide indexation. E capital assets ki matram I cannot provide any sort of indexation. What are those? Let us see. First one is nothing but, okay, first one I can say you are having a bond. Any sort of bonds you are having or any sort of debentures you are having, okay, any sort of bonds or debentures other than, what is the meaning of this? Other than what? Other than something called as capital indexed bonds. Okay, ante capital indexed bonds tappa remaining whatever bonds or debentures you are having, you should not provide indexation. And I can provide indexation if that is a capital index bond. If that is not a capital index bond, if that is a general bond or debentures issued by whom? Bond or debentures issued by government. Issued by government or issued by Reserve Bank of India. Reserve Bank of India ఒక బాండ్ ఇష్యూ చేసింది. ఆ బాండ్ క్యాపిటల్ ఇండెక్స్డ్ బాండ్ కాకపోతే you should not provide any sort of indexation. If that is a capital indexed bond, you can take the benefit of indexation. అంటే ఈ కేసులో indexation ఇవ్వకూడదు. You should not take the benefit of indexation in this following case. Then what? Then this point we'll discuss in much more detail going forward. There is something called as slump sale, which we'll be discussing in detail maybe tomorrow under section 50B. Okay, slump sale under section 50B. Any transfer in the form of slump sale is not subject to indexation. So దాని మీద indexation అనేది ఇవ్వకూడదు. What is slump sale? What is section 50B? That entire concept we'll try to understand in tomorrow's class. Then the other thing which you need to consider is nothing but any sort of security. See, whenever I use the word any security, that can be share, that can be debentures, that can be unit, anything. It can be anything. So any security. ఎలా కొంటున్నాం? You are purchasing in foreign currency. You are purchasing the security in a foreign currency. Who is purchasing? By a non-resident. Transfer of shares. by a non-resident and the shares are purchased in foreign currency, then even though the shares are held for a period of more than 12 months, we will not provide any sort of indexation. Enduku? Those shares are sold by a non-resident, those shares are sold in foreign currency. Of course, this point again I will discuss clearly maybe tomorrow when we are discussing something called as first proviso. First proviso to section 48. See, today we have discussed section 48 and we are discussing section 55. Tomorrow we'll try to discuss the first proviso to section 48. There I will explain this in much more detail. At present, man em gurtupeట్టుకోవాలి, any non-resident if he is selling the security in a convertible foreign currency, even though that share is a long-term capital asset, indexation provide చేయకూడదు. So the gain is a long-term capital gain, but you are calculating the capital gain by taking not index cost of acquisition, but by taking something called as your cost of acquisition. That's what is nothing but your third point. Then the next point we need to consider here is nothing but, okay, you are someone called as foreign institutional investor. You are someone called as foreign institutional investors. Okay, foreign institutional investors. So the foreign institutional investors, whenever he do the transfer, there also you should not consider anything which is called as for indexation. So under section 115 AD, so you are called as foreign institutional investors under section 115 AD. These general cases. Okay, so these are the cases where indexation is not to be provided. E cases kakunda whatever long term capital asset you transfer, you can always take something called as a indexation. Okay, just note cheskondi, so then we'll proceed further. So cases where indexation cannot be provided, so just quickly take this down. Right. So again, okay, sir, let us quickly cover. See, cost of acquisition under section 55. Three categories I need to break it. So what are the three categories? Financial asset, self-generated asset, other asset. So other asset enti, whenever you are having other asset, I need to see whether the asset is purchased before 1st April 2001 or asset is purchased after 1st April 2001. Basically, they will focus as no indexed cost of acquisition table has been prepared from the financial year 2001-2 kabatti asset అనేది we are focusing whether you are purchasing before that date or after that date. Now before, let us focus on asset acquired before 1st April 2001. So whenever you are purchasing any asset before 1st April 2001, let us see what is the consequences. Em chestam akkada, there you need to see fair market value as on 1st April 2001. Okay, say suppose you had purchased that asset in 99-2000. When I had purchased that asset in 99-2000. So ultimately asset purchase were before 1st April 2001. So the act gives me two things. It says either you consider fair market value as on 1st April 2001 or you take your actual cost of acquisition. Actual cost of acquisition, whichever is beneficial to the SSC. What the act says, whichever is beneficial. Ante what is the meaning? Whichever is beneficial clearly means whichever is higher. Whichever is high, I need to consider. So whenever the asset is acquired before 1st April 2001, I should always consider what? Value of the asset before 1st April 2001 or actual cost of acquisition of the asset after 2001. actual cost of acquisition. Whenever you are acquiring the asset, on the date at what price you are purchasing, that or market value as on 1st April 2001, whichever is higher, we need to consider. Then, whenever you are purchasing the asset after 1st April 2001, this option is not there. So, what will be your cost of acquisition? Actual cost of acquisition. Whatever price you are paying for the asset, అది మాత్రమే కన్సిడర్ చేయాలి. ఒకవేళ బిఫోర్ కన్సిడర్ చేసినట్టయితే 1st April 2001 ని ఫెయిర్ మార్కెట్ వాల్యూ ఎంతకైతే కొంటున్నామో విచ్ ఎవర్ ఇస్ హైయర్ తీసుకుంటాం. If I purchase that asset on or after 1st April 2001, then only one thing I will consider, which is nothing but something called as your actual cost of acquisition. I hope this is clear. Okay, so just take it down. Then we'll move on to the other things. Deentlo again there are two different scenarios, so that we'll try to discuss. Okay, just quickly copy this down now. Okay, now what will happen? Again in this we are having two cases. Here two cases, here we'll be getting two cases. In the two cases, in this the first case is what? Asset acquired under section 49 subsection 1. Okay, asset మనం ఎలా కొంటున్నాం? Under mode specified under 49 subsection 1. ఇక్కడ other modes అంటే not in mode specified under 49 subsection 1 is said to be called as other modes. Same thing here. Even 1st April 2001 తర్వాత నేను కొన్నా సరే asset acquired under section 49 subsection 1, the provision is different. Under other mode, the provision is going to be different. Clear? So ఇక్కడ మనం ఏంటి టోటల్ ఫస్ట్ టూ కేసెస్ డిస్కస్ చేసాం. ఫస్ట్ కేసు ఏంటి? బిఫోర్ 1st April 2001. బిఫోర్ ఏప్రిల్ 2001 లో ఫెయిర్ మార్కెట్ వాల్యూ చూస్తాం, యాక్చువల్ కాస్ట్ ఆఫ్ ఎక్విజిషన్ చూస్తాం, విచ్ ఎవర్ ఇస్ హైయర్ విల్ బి కన్సిడర్డ్. కానీ దాంట్లో టూ సినారియోస్ విల్ అరైజ్. వన్, asset acquired under 49 subsection 1, other mode. Say for example, let me give an example. X has gifted a building to his son Y. Y కి ఒక బిల్డింగ్ గిఫ్ట్ కింద ఇచ్చాడు. ఓకే, X Y కి ఒక బిల్డింగ్ గిఫ్ట్ కింద ఇచ్చాడు. Now Y ఎప్పుడుది? Let us consider X, this everything happened before. So let us consider 1st April 1999. X has a building. That building was transferred to Y on 1st April 2009. Y has transferred this to Z. Eppudu? So let us consider in the financial year 1920. Financial year 1920 lo the asset has been transferred. Now the cases. ఏ కేసులోకి వస్తుంది? Case 1. Because asset was purchased before 1st April 2001. Okay, asset was purchased before 1st April 2001. అందుకని ఫస్ట్ కేసులోకి వస్తుంది. ఫస్ట్ కేసులోకి వస్తే what is the cost of acquisition? Fair market value as on 1st April 2001 or actual cost of acquisition, whichever is higher. Say suppose 1st April 2001 ni I can take the fair market value. Let me take an example. Fair market value on 1st April 2001 ఒక 3 lakhs అనుకుందాం. This is there. But what is the actual cost of acquisition of Y? Y ఏం పే చేయలేదు కదా, because Y కి ఎలా వచ్చింది? గిఫ్ట్ వచ్చింది. So for gift he need not pay anything. So for him the cost of acquisition is 0. అలాంటప్పుడు ఏం చెప్తుంది? 55. In this case section 55 says if you are acquiring the asset in mode specified under section 49 subsection 1, it says you fair market value as on 1st April 2001 or cost of acquisition or cost to previous owner. X ఎంతకైతే కొంటున్నాడో that will be considered as your cost because you have not paid anything to that. So అందుకని what the X is? ఈ కేసులో if you are purchasing the asset, then actual cost of acquisition. You are not purchasing the asset, you are getting that asset under 49 subsection 1. అప్పుడు నా కాస్ట్ ఆఫ్ ఎక్విజిషన్ 0, కానీ యాక్ట్ ఏం చెప్తుంది, కాస్ట్ టు ద ప్రీవియస్ ఓనర్. ఎక్స్ ఎంతకైతే కొన్నాడో ఆ కాస్ట్. సో సపోజ్ ఎక్స్ కూడా కొనలేదు, ఎక్స్ కి ఎక్స్ వాళ్ళ ఫాదర్ గిఫ్ట్ ఇచ్చాడు. హిస్ ఫాదర్ కుడ్ హ్యావ్ పర్చేస్ ఎట్ వన్ పాయింట్ ఆఫ్ టైమ్, దట్ కాస్ట్ విల్ బి కన్సిడర్డ్. దట్ కాస్ట్ or fair market value, whichever is higher, will be considered as your cost of acquisition. Is it clear? Fine. So that's what is the first part. Second part. Now we'll come to the second part. See, when we come to the second part, what is the second part? Cost of asset. I mean, asset was purchased after 1st April 2001. Let us see. Now, let me elaborate it here. Asset acquired. You are acquiring the asset on or after 1st April 2001. Any sort of asset acquired on or after 1st April 2001, ఇందాక చెప్పిన two consequences will arise. What are those two consequences? Asset acquired under 49 subsection 1, asset acquired under other modes or other category or whatever it is. Okay, now asset acquired in modes under 49 subsection 1. Same example తీసుకుందాం. Again same example. X Y కి ల్యాండ్ ట్రాన్స్ఫర్ చేస్తున్నాడు. ఈ కేసులోకి రావాలంటే, ఈ కేటగిరీలో రావాలంటే, 1 second. Okay, so 49 subsection 1 other modes. Say for example, X Y కి ల్యాండ్ సేల్ చేస్తున్నాడు. So what is this category? On or after 1st April 2001. Okay, so let me take an example that X, ఇక్కడ టూ సిచ్యువేషన్స్ అరైజ్ అవ్వచ్చు కదా. ఆన్ ఆర్ ఆఫ్టర్ 1st April 2001 అంటున్నాం అంటే ఏంటి, Y కి ఆన్ ఆర్ ఆఫ్టర్ 2001 అన్న రావచ్చు, X కొండమే 2001 తర్వాత కొనవచ్చు. See, two consequences arises. X has purchased before 2001, X has purchased after 2001. See, clear or not? See, again there are two chances here. Previous owner purchasing the asset before 1st April 2001, one category. Previous owner purchases the asset after 1st April 2001, the other category. So దీంట్లో again I need to divide that under two different categories. Now let us see what are those. Previous owner. Okay, because 49 subsection 1 అనేది purely speaking about something called as the previous owner. So previous owner ఎప్పుడు acquire చేస్తున్నాడు, before. Previous owner when he is acquiring, after. Before 1st April 2001, on or after 1st April 2001. Before 1st April 2001, on or after 1st April 2001. So the provision will get totally changed. Now let us try to get into this particular mode. So ఇక్కడ ఏమవుతుంది, whenever the previous owner acquires before 1st April 2001, the previous owner is acquiring on or after 1st April 2001. So let me take two examples. First ఈ case example చూద్దాం. X transferring the building to Y. X is a father, Y is a son. X is giving this as a gift. Say, let us consider X has purchased this on 1st April 95. అంటే before 1st April 2001, X has purchased. Okay. Then, ఈ situation లో what is happening? Transfer is happening after 1st April 2001. That is the reason we are discussing here. Otherwise, we could have discussed the above. So, transfer Y కి ఎప్పుడు transfer చేస్తున్నాడు? Let us consider the transfer is happening on 1st April 2002. 1st April 2001 తర్వాత the asset was transferred to the son. Now what is happening? Y is selling that asset to Z in the financial year 1920 for a consideration of 30 lakhs. Y is transferring that at a consideration of 30 lakhs. Now we need to determine the cost of acquisition. ఇక్కడ Y ki cost of acquisition is 0. See, whenever the asset is acquired after 1st April 2001, what is the cost of acquisition? Ikkada మనం discuss చేసాం. What is the cost of acquisition? Actual cost of acquisition should be considered as your cost of acquisition. Actual cost of acquisition shall be considered as your cost of acquisition. So ఈ కేసులో your cost of acquisition should be actual cost of acquisition. Actual cost of acquisition. What is the actual cost of acquisition? Zero, because Y is the gift. Y is not paying anything. So for Y, the actual cost of acquisition is 0. There 49 subsection 1 applies. 49 subsection 1 ఏం చెప్తుంది? As you are not acquiring the gift by purchasing, as you are not acquiring the building by purchasing, you are getting that as a gift. So what the provision says here? Or cost to previous owner. Actual cost of acquisition or cost to previous owner. So cost to previous owner anta మారిపోతుంది. If the previous owner purchases on or after 1st April 2001, the cost is different. The previous owner purchases before 1st April 2001, the cost of acquisition is different. ఎందుకు? ఇక్కడ ఈ కేసులో take the fair market value as on 1st April 2001 or actual cost, whichever is high. But if the previous owner purchases the asset on or after 1st April 2001, I should consider only the cost of acquisition. So andukani this date plays a very vital role. So adi decide chesi I will be deciding something called as cost of acquisition. Okay, whenever you are acquiring the asset on or after 1st April 81, 49 subsection 1 other modes. 49 subsection 1 what it says? Before April 2001 previous owner acquired cheste fair market value or actual cost, whichever is higher, will be taken as the cost of acquisition to the previous owner. Previous owner 1st April 2001 tarvata acquire cheste what is the cost at which he is acquiring, that will be taken as the cost of acquisition to the previous owner. Now as you are acquiring the asset after 1st April 2001, what the provision says? Actual cost of acquisition or cost to the previous owner shall be taken as your cost of acquisition. Clear? Any doubts so far? Yeah. So that's what is something called as a cost of acquisition. So మనం cost of acquisition discuss చేస్తున్నాం. Now in both the cases, case 1 and case 2. Okay, case 1. So now I'm just preparing. Okay, so better just take a note of this, or you note a table which I'm preparing here, that's sufficient. So ఒక చిన్న table prepare చేద్దాం. In that let us try to see how we can calculate the indexed cost of acquisition in two different scenarios. Okay, calculation of cost of acquisition and indexed cost of acquisition. Okay, particulars before asset acquired before 1st April 2001, asset acquired on or after 1st April 2001. That's what is the first scenario. Okay, now how you are acquiring? Not under section 49 subsection 1 other mode. You are acquiring the asset to the other mode. Deentlo we need to decide how do we calculate cost of acquisition, how do we calculate something called as indexed cost of acquisition. See, it's not different. Whatever we have discussed above, then I am just trying to put in a small table so that will be easy for your revision part. Okay, then cost of acquisition ఏమవుతుంది ఇక్కడ? Before అయినట్టయితే, so if you are purchasing before, what is your cost of acquisition? Fair market value చూస్తాం as on 1st April 2001 or actual cost of acquisition, whichever is high will be called as our cost of acquisition. Now coming to indexed cost of acquisition. Indexed cost of acquisition. So for example, let me give an example again. Say X is selling the land to Z in the year 1920 at a consideration of 30 lakhs, and X has purchased the property in 1995, say for 3 lakhs. 3 lakhs konna asset he is selling for 30 lakhs. Manaki index tables ఎప్పటి నుంచి వచ్చాయి? The index tables came into force from 2001 2002. Initially, the index table starts with 100. So, even though you had purchased before 2001, from the income tax point of view, నేను ఏ అసెంప్షన్ తీసుకోవాలి 2001 లోనే కొన్నట్టు అసెంప్షన్ తీసుకోవాలి. సో అల్టిమేట్లీ 100 index value ki the cost was 3 lakhs. At present, on today, what is your index cost of index value? 289. 100 ki 3 lakhs అయితే 289 ఎంత? That gives you the value. So that's what is something called as the indexed cost of acquisition. How you are calculating that? 3 lakhs into 289 divided by 100. 289 ఏంటి? Index value for the year of transfer. ఏ ఇయర్ లో అయితే అసెట్ ట్రాన్స్ఫర్ అవుతుందో ఆ ఇయర్ వాల్యూ ఇస్ నథింగ్ బట్ 289. సో వాట్ ఈస్ 100 ఈస్ నథింగ్ బట్ ద ఇండెక్స్ వాల్యూ ఫర్ ద ఇయర్ 2001-2. సో ultimately if I depict this in the formula, what formula I can write for your index cost of acquisition? 3 lakhs ఏంటి? 3 lakhs is nothing but your cost of acquisition. Cost of acquisition into index value for the year of transfer divided by index value for what? For 2001-2002. That's what is the formula which you have to consider if the asset was acquired before 1st April 2001 and not in mode mentioned under section 49 subsection 1. This is the base to calculate. I hope this example is clear. So I'm just erasing this example. Okay, now if the same asset is acquired, on or after 1st April 2001, cost of acquisition ఏమవుతుంది? ఈ పాయింట్ అరేస్ కాదు. సో మై కాస్ట్ ఆఫ్ acquisition will be purely cost of purchase తీసుకుంటాం. Then how do I calculate index cost of acquisition? Cost of acquisition, this remains the same, into index for the year of transfer. This will change, index value for year of purchase. Say, let me give an example here. Say suppose you have purchased that asset in 2005-2006 for 6 lakhs. 6 lakhs kontunnam. Asset is sold in the year 2019-20 year lo you had sold the asset. Now how do I calculate? E year index value తీసుకోవాలి. In that year the index value was 170. In 1819 the index value is 289. So when the index value was 117, you have purchased the asset for 6 lakhs. When the index value is 289, what is the cost? So ante em chestunam cross multiply. You are doing just simply cross multiply. 6 lakhs into 289 divided by 117. That gives you something called as indexed cost of acquisition. That's it. So that is the basis of calculation of your indexed cost of acquisition, where you are purchasing the asset not under section 49 subsection 1. Now let us take the next case. Okay, you are purchasing the asset under section 49 subsection 1. Then how do I determine the cost of acquisition? Then how do I determine the indexed cost of acquisition? So దీంట్లో, as we have discussed earlier, okay, so just take the note of this, then we'll proceed to this. If note చేసుకోండి, then we'll move on to this particular scenario. Now, okay, ఈ కాన్సెప్ట్ నేను ఫినిష్ చేసి I will stop for today. So tomorrow we'll be dealing with some other important topics. So ఇప్పటివరకు మనం డిస్కస్ చేసిన దాని మీద రేపు we'll do few basic problems. So those are the basic problems. Then once the basic problems are done, tomorrow we'll be trying to understand special cases. అంటే ఏంటి? కన్వర్జన్ ఆఫ్ ఏ స్టాక్ ఎంటెడ్ ఇంటూ క్యాపిటల్ అసెట్, క్యాపిటల్ గెయిన్స్ ఎలా క్యాలిక్యులేట్ చేయాలి, ఇన్సూరెన్స్ దగ్గర క్యాపిటల్ గెయిన్స్ ఎలా క్యాలిక్యులేట్ చేయాలి, గవర్నమెంట్ కంపల్సరీ ఎక్వైర్ చేస్తే హౌ డు క్యాలిక్యులేట్ ద క్యాపిటల్ గెయిన్స్. సో దట్ ఎవ్రీథింగ్ విల్ ట్రై టు డిస్కస్ ఇన్ టుమారోస్ క్లాస్. దాంతో ఐ కెన్ సే 2 parts of the capital gains is completed. Now let us try to see, if the asset is acquired in accordance with section 49 subsection 1, then how do I calculate cost of acquisition? Then how do I calculate index cost of acquisition? ఇది డిస్కస్ చేసి we'll stop for now. Now cost of acquisition, దీంట్లో 2 possibilities arises. ఏంటది? Possibility number 1, previous owner acquires before 1st April 2001. ప్రీవియస్ ఓనర్ కొండమే 1st April 2001 కన్నా ముందర కొంటున్నాడు, కొని ప్రెసెంట్ ఓనర్కి 2001 తర్వాత ట్రాన్స్ఫర్ చేశాడు. అది కేస్ నెంబర్ 1. ఇది డిస్కస్ చేద్దాం ఫస్ట్, దెన్ విల్ డిస్కస్ ఆన్ ద సెకండ్ కేస్. సో ప్రీవియస్ ఓనర్ acquired before 1st April 2001, then what is the consequences? Then same provision apply అవుతుంది. ఇక్కడ ఏదైతే వాట్ ఎవర్ వీ హావ్ డిస్కస్ ద సేమ్ థింగ్ విల్ కన్సిడర్. ఏంటిది? ఫెయిర్ మార్కెట్ వాల్యూ యాజ్ ఆన్ 1st April 2001 ఆర్ కాస్ట్ ఆఫ్ ఎక్విజిషన్, whatever it is, cost of acquisition to whom? Cost of acquisition to the previous owner, whichever is higher. See, cost of acquisition to the previous owner, whichever is higher, will be considered as your cost of acquisition. Now, when the asset was acquired before 1st April 2001, ade asset, if you are acquiring after 1st April 2001, then ultimately say I need not mention this separately here because manalaga mundare 2 columns mention chestunnam kabatti here I can write, if the asset is acquired by the previous owner before April 2001, whichever is higher. If the asset is acquired by the previous owner after 2001, then ultimately and it is transferred to the present SSC after 1st April 2001, simple ga what is the cost of acquisition? Cost to previous owner. Previous owner ఎంతకైతే కొంటున్నాడో that same thing shall be considered as your cost of acquisition. So whichever is higher, I will consider. If the same transfer is happening after 1st April, previous owner acquired after 1st April 2001, cost to the previous owner will be considered. Example చూద్దాం. Both the cases will take an example, then we'll discuss on calculation of your indexed cost of acquisition. Example చూద్దాం. For example, previous owner purchased the asset on 1st April 2009. Say X is the previous owner, purchased the asset on 1st April 2009 at a cost of 3 lakhs. At a cost of 3 lakhs. What he has done, given as a gift to Y. Eppudu 1st April 2001 taravata. Ade 1st April 2000 kanda mundara aithe you could have clearly covered under the other case. So 1st April 2000 taravata. Acquired by the previous owner after 1st April 2000, before 2001, transferred to the present owner after 2001. So transfer is happening after 2001. So let us take an example here. Transfer is happening on or after 1st April 2002. So ultimately transfer is happening on or after 1st April 2002. Ade before anything, ultimately that could have been covered under the first category, but not under the second category. Then let us see, then what Y is doing? Y is selling the property to Z in 1920. Ikkada cost of acquisition to Y name calculate here. What is the cost of acquisition to Y? You are not acquiring that under normal mode. You have acquired under 49 subsection 1. As you are acquiring the asset under 49 subsection 1, I need to see whether the previous owner has acquired the asset before 1st April 2001 or not. Previous owner has acquired the asset before 1st April 2001. What is the cost to the previous owner? The cost to the previous owner was 3 lakhs. So I will consider my cost of acquisition as 3 lakhs or fair market value whichever is higher. Yedi, say for example fair market value on 1st April 2004 lakhs. So ultimately by applying this section whichever is high, 4 lakhs is high. So cost of acquisition will be considered as 4 lakhs but not 3 lakhs. This is the example for this case. Next case kodam. What is next case? Previous owner has purchased after 1st April 2001. Transfer is also happening after 1st April 2001. Then that is the case. Say, ide example తీసుకుంటే previous owner has purchased on 1st April 2002. X has purchased on 1st April 2002, gifted to his son on 1st April 2005. So both are happening after 1st April 2001. Then what is your cost of acquisition? Your cost of acquisition is nothing but purely cost to the previous owner. Fair market value and consider cheyalsina avasaram ledhu. I should not consider fair market value. So let us consider the cost of acquisition is 3 lakhs. That's what is the difference between this scenario and this scenario. Is this clear? Now దీనికి indexed cost of equation ఎలా calculate చేయాలి? For the same scenario, let us see how do we calculate the indexed cost of equation. Let us come down 1 second. Indexed cost of equation. So for the same scenario, I need to calculate something called as indexed cost of acquisition. First case law, previous owner has purchased before, transfer is happening to the present owner after. So ikkada how do I calculate the index cost of acquisition? First thing is same, take the cost of acquisition. Enti cost of acquisition ikkada 4 lakhs or 3 lakhs, whichever is higher. So in the present example, 4 lakhs is to be considered as my cost of acquisition into this remains the same. Into the index value for year of transfer divided by ikkada em chestunam index value for the year 1 2 consider chesam, ikkada index value for the year of purchase acquire chestam. Kani ikkada purchase em ledu, entundi purchase by previous owner undi, transfer to the present owner undi. Edi consider cheyali? Two dates are there, whether I have to consider 1st April 2019 or whether I have to consider 1st April 2002. Deeniki two things are there. Bombay High Court says something, Income Tax Act says something. Bombay High Court prakaram chuste the provision is completely different. Income Tax Act prakaram chuste the provision is completely different. So I am telling both the things. ఏది అప్లై చేయాలి? రెండు రైటే, both are right, but you need to clearly mention what you are applying, whether you are applying the judgment of Bombay High Court or whether you are applying the Income Tax Act. That you need to be mentioning very clearly. ఎందుకంటే మనకి even in your CMA or CA practice manual, whatever it is, problems are done in both the scenarios. కొన్ని problems based upon income tax, few problems based upon Bombay High Court. So we need to understand both the things into consideration. Now what the Income Tax Act says, first let us try to understand that. Okay, Income Tax Act em cheptundante index value for the year in which asset was first held, in which the asset was first held by the current SSC. కరెంట్ యాసిడ్ దగ్గర 99 లో లేదు, కరెంట్ యాసిడ్ దగ్గర అసెట్ ఎప్పుడు ఉంది? 2002 లో వచ్చింది. సో ఐ హ్యావ్ టు కన్సిడర్ ద ఇండెక్స్ వాల్యూ ఫర్ ద ఇయర్ 2002 బట్ నాట్ 99. దట్స్ వాట్ ఈస్ యాజ్ పర్ ద ఇన్కమ్ ట్యాక్స్ యాక్ట్. ఇన్కమ్ ట్యాక్స్ యాక్ట్ ఏం చెప్తుంది? ఇండెక్స్ వాల్యూ ఫర్ ద ఇయర్ ఇన్ విచ్ అసెట్ వాస్ ఫస్ట్ హెల్డ్ బై ద ఎస్ఎస్సి. అసెట్ వాస్ ఫస్ట్ హెల్డ్ బై ద ఎస్ఎస్సి not in 99, but asset was held by the SSC in 2002. So I had to consider the index value for the year 2002 but not the 99. So that's what is one important thing we have to consider. Idi as per the Income Tax Act. If you look into the definition of the Bombay High Court, it says take your cost of acquisition, multiply that with your index value for the year of transfer, divide that with index value for the year acquired by previous owner. ప్రీవియస్ ఓనర్ ఎప్పుడైతే అసెట్ కొన్నాడో ఆ ఇయర్ నుంచి కన్సిడర్ చేస్తాం. అంటే యాజ్ పర్ బాంబే హై కోర్ట్ ఐ విల్ నాట్ కన్సిడర్ దిస్ బట్ ఐ విల్ కన్సిడర్ దిస్. ఇన్కమ్ ట్యాక్స్ యాక్ట్ ప్రకారం ఐ విల్ కన్సిడర్ దిస్ బట్ నాట్ దిస్. దట్స్ వాట్ ఈస్ ద డిఫరెన్స్ ఇన్ కోర్ట్ జడ్జ్మెంట్. That's it. So based upon this, what we are trying to do, we are trying to calculate your indexed cost of acquisition as per income tax, as per Bombay High Court. Epudidi, when the asset was acquired by the previous owner before 1st April 2001, asset is transferred to the current owner after 1st April 2001. This is what is the case. Now second situation. What is your second situation? Rendu 2001 tarvate avutunayi. Previous owner acquired on 1st April 2002. Asset is transferred to the SSC after 1st April 2002. Both are happening after the same period. Daniki kuda index cost of acquisition is same. Bombay High Court, Income Tax Act. What Income Tax Act says? Same thing here. Cost of acquisition into index value for the year of transfer divided by index value for the year in which asset was first held by SSC. And the same thing, ikkada change em ledu. There is no change in calculation even if the previous owner is holding the asset before or after. Em change avutundi? Only the change will happen in the terms of cost of acquisition, fair market value or cost, whichever is higher మాత్రమే కన్సిడర్ చేస్తున్నాం. So rest of things there is no change. So even as per Mumbai High Court, what I have to consider? Index value for year of transfer divided by previous owner, index value for the year in which asset was held by the previous owner. So that's what is the calculation of your index values. That's it.